Raiders only have 3 up by the line of scrimmage. Mac Jones hands it off on a draw to Ramondre Stevenson, breaks out of a tackle at the 50, has the 45, breaks away from another tackle, pitches it backwards, and now Jacoby Myers spinning around. He throws it to Chandler Jones in midfield, and a sniffer! Chandler Jones racing towards the end zone. He scores! Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
I can't believe what I just saw!
Again!
I can't believe what I just saw! This is unbelievable!
Honestly, I was just trying to catch my breath. When I got in the end zone, I was kind of just standing there. All my teammates kind of were just pushing me in every different direction. I really couldn't breathe. I couldn't see much. And I guess we had won the game. It was wild.
Fantasy Football Happy Hour with Matthew Berry, served by Applebee's.
Welcome to the Fantasy Football Happy Hour, coming to you live after a wild weekend in the NFL. We had action on Saturday. We had action on Sunday. I'm Connor Rogers alongside Matthew Berry, Jay Croucher. Berry, looking a little different today.
Well, you know what? Prior to last night's Sunday Night Football game between the Giants and the Commanders, I made a bet with Pete Domalatis, who is one of the producers here at NBC. He's a producer on this show. He also produces Sims Unbuttoned and a lot of other great shows here at NBC. He is a diehard, crazy Giants fan. And so we made a bet, a friendly bet, if you will, between two buddies about our respective teams playing on Monday Night Football. And the bet was that if the Commanders won, Pete was going to come on this show and read a poem that was kind of an ode to the Commanders. It was going to have to be a poem of his own writing praising the Washington Commanders. And I said that if I would lost, that I would come on and wear a jersey of the opposing team that won the game. And so I am honoring my bet for Pete. You know what? Give the refs the credit. Pete, listen, a bet's a bet, man. A bet's a bet. And so when you lose, you lose. And so hats off to the referees, to John Hussey and his crew. They won. It is what it is. You go out to the field of play and you try to do your best. Sometimes you come up short, and that's what happened here. The refs got the best of us. What are you going to do? And the refs, by the way, move into the 7th spot of the playoffs. They are now looking good for the postseason. I don't know if you saw Steve Kornacki on Football Night in America, but the refs now like an 85% chance to make the playoffs after their victory over the Washington Commanders. So congratulations all around.
Let's hear from the Commanders after the game, their thoughts on the actual refs in this one.
The call on Terry seemed pretty adamant. He had pointed his hand out to the ref. What was the explanation?
What did you guys see on the film?
Looked like Terry pointed his hand.
That's exactly what I thought too. Thank you.
And I got to ask about the Curtis one as well. The 4th down.
In fact, don't ask me about the refereeing because I can't answer the question.
But Terry, did you hear him tell you that you were okay?
Yeah, I did. That's why I'm giving him a thumbs up twice to make sure I was good. But in that event, I guess I can't make it close for a judgment call. But like I said, I feel like I checked with him twice.
Good game last night, Matthew, I thought.
Yeah, really right down to the wire. A couple heated moments.
So, all right. Can I ask you guys this? You guys, neither of you guys are Commanders fans.
Or
right?
Giants fans.
You're
I said or Giants fans.
Or Giants
completely
fans.
unbiased.
Right, I was going to say, exactly. You guys are actually both Jets fans, right?
See how I feel in a couple of weeks.
Right, exactly. You flip-flop a lot. You're Australian. You're really an Australian rules football fan. But whatever. Connor is a well-known Jets fan. Whatever. So you guys, quote-unquote, got no dog in this fight. Correct. So I have a number of questions here. But my first one here is that from everything you know, and I know that you guys don't know Terry McLaurin personally, but from everything you know about Terry McLaurin and the reputation he has throughout the league, and the clip that you just saw, and if you're listening on a podcast, that was the second voice you heard was Terry McLaurin, right there. Do you believe him, or do you think he's lying?
No, I
don't believe that man is a liar. No, I think he's telling the truth.
Yeah, I'm almost certain Terry McLaurin's telling the truth. Scouted him coming out of Ohio State, pristine character. Just not the type of guy that would make anything up.
He has been. I just can tell you because I know a lot of the people around the Commanders. He is beloved there, beloved by the team, beloved by management, beloved by the community. There's a reason why it's not just his on-field play, but it's the character of the man. It's why he got paid what he paid in the offseason, because he is somebody that they believe is a true face of the franchise, that's somebody that they can be proud of and be behind. And so when Terry McLaurin says, I thought I was good. I asked him if I was good. The guy said, move up a little. I moved up a little. And then I turned to him again. And I said, am I good? And he says, I'm good. And I give him the 2 thumbs. That's what he's saying. And that's why I did the 2 thumbs up, because I'm good. And then they call the penalty. And then they take a touchdown off the board. Terry McAuley, who's a former NFL referee, who often gives the benefit of the doubt to the referees. He is our rules analyst here on NBC and Football Night in America. He was like, I wouldn't have called that. Terry McLaurin's like, I was told I was good. If you watch the play, and if you can go to my Twitter, you can see it. It's pinned to the top of my Twitter. They both give a thumbs up, right? You see it right here. Here, for those of you watching it as well. Look at that. It's a circle. Like, he gives the thumb up twice. Okay, great. And then here, Brian Robinson goes in for a touchdown that makes it within 2 points, right? Obviously hurts the Commanders, hurts anyone who had Brian Robinson on their fantasy team. I had Brian Robinson anytime touchdown as a bet, hurts me. I lose money on this play. There's a lot at stake with that particular play, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that had Brian Robinson in a fantasy matchup, that had him as an anytime touchdown bet, that had the Commanders plus 3.5, which was the in-game line. So a lot of implications to that, but that's okay, because all right, fine, whatever, it's a penalty. I mean, it's egregious. I don't get it. But then the next thing, then on 4th down, do we have this? Do we have this play when so Taylor Heineke goes back to pass, and he's looking around trying to find Curtis Samuel, and he doesn't find Curtis Samuel, as you see it here on your screen. You're watching it here, right? So Taylor Heineke, he's running around, he's trying to look, he throws in the end zone. There's Curtis Samuel. Nope, the play is broken up. The play is broken up. And why is the play broken up? Because he's being tackled. He's literally that's like, by the way, in 25 states, that's assault. He's that close to this guy. He's all over Curtis Samuel. He's tackling. Can we take a shot of this? Camera 1, can we get in close of this? Because when we get to the video, look at that. He's literally, he's got his arms wrapped around him. I don't hug my mom that tight. What are we doing? And somehow this is not pass interference. The pool reporter reporting from Hussey after the game said, it's a judgment call, and ultimately didn't think it was pass interference. Yet, despite the fact it was pass interference. I'm going to say a couple of things here, and then we can wrap this up and move on. First off, by the way, the refs, in fairness, the refs were bad throughout the game. They missed. No, and I'm being honest. They missed they missed calls on the Giants too. Because I hear all the Giants fans watching this going, oh yeah, well what about the fumble that should have been a touchdown because he wasn't touched. Sure. And I'm with you. 100%. Now the fact of the matter is they had to slow it down to milliseconds. It was moving this much before the ground, and I think that had it been called in real time, he's down to the ground, they probably would have touched him, and it may not have been a touchdown. We don't know. But is it a missed call? It's 100% a missed call. The thumb in Thibodeau's eye. I get it. Bad calls on both sides. But that's egregious. And this is the thing that I tweeted, and then we'll move on. And by the way, the other thing is that the Commanders, look, you can't fumble twice, right? You can't give up a strip sack touchdown, which they did, and they also fumbled in their red zone. So 2 unforgivable mistakes in a one-score game. But there is too much at stake. There is too much at stake in the NFL for them to get calls like this wrong. We have the technology. And I'm angry and I'm having some fun here, but I don't think the referees are bad guys. I don't think they're purposely trying to miss these calls. What I do think is I think they're overmatched. I think the game is too fast. I think they're too old. I think it is moving too fast. They don't have the capacity to be able to judge these bang plays in real time. Now, admittedly, the pass interference one, that's inexplicable because it's not a bang play. We could all see it 5 seconds before the ball gets there. He's practically on the ground. And the McLaurin one also makes no sense because he's literally am I good? He hears I'm good, and then he but there is too much at stake. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and I know the NFL wants to get it right. I know they do, and I don't know why it's impossible to do so. We have the technology. Make referees full time so they can spend all week long learning this. Have every play reviewable, right? I mean, we have that technology. Make every game forced to have the same number of cameras because based on the game, like NBC has more cameras there at a primetime game than the 5th regional on CBS does at 1 o'clock on a Sunday, right? Make sure there's a goal line cam every single, like these are fairly, and it doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but it's going to be a lot better. It's going to be a lot better, and it's costing people their job. Like, there's a chance the Commanders don't make the playoffs. And as a result, I don't know what Daniel Snyder or whoever potentially a new owner of the Commanders might say, but like, do they fire Ron Rivera? Do they decide to move on from Taylor Heineke? Jobs are at stake, careers are at stake, legacies are at stake. Not to mention, obviously, the fantasy and betting implications of that game. There's way too much at stake, way too much money, way too much real-life stuff that is at stake in these games to us get it, for people to get it as wrong as they're getting it. And it's not just happening to the Commanders, right? The Minnesota game, it ended up not mattering because the Vikings ended up winning. But there were 2 touchdowns called back on the Vikings that should have been touchdowns. The Raiders game, the Patriots should not have lost that game. No. And I can't believe I'm sitting here saying like the Raiders got screwed by the refs because I feel like they always get the benefit of every call. But they did. It shouldn't have come down to that crazy play we started off with because Keelan Cole had his foot out.
It's consistently bad is the problem.
Consistently bad. And consistently inconsistent. Yes. Like, it's not even like,
I thought we were going to lead the show with Cardinals-Broncos, so all this emotion is quite surprising to me, but that's okay.
Trace McSorley, Brett Rippon?
Yeah.
That's the game that does it for
ripping game of football.
Here's the thing. If the Commanders lose, the Commanders lose. And honestly, for much of the game, I mean, the Giants made big plays when they needed to, and the Commanders didn't. Again, the 2 fumbles are bad. But the Commanders also ran at will, and they dominated time possession, and I think there was a lot of ticky-tack fouls. I thought the 2-point conversion shouldn't have been called. I thought that was a very ticky-tack play as well. I was watching that with Chris Sims, noted Giants homer Chris Sims. Openly admits he's a Giants fan.
From New Jersey.
And yeah, I mean, his father played. His father's a New York Giants legend. And literally Chris Sims was like, yeah, that probably shouldn't have been called. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, just on the 2-point conversion. I want us to lose legitimately. You know what I mean? Like, and we still might have. Again, bad calls on both sides. But to have the Robinson touchdown called back and then the Samuel mugging not get called, like, it's awful. It's awful.
Let's get into some of the fantasy implications from this game, and we'll go right down the line of the biggest games from the weekend.
Take the rest of the segment.
It is. So me and Jay have Giants-Commanders covered here. Big day for Saquon Barkley. The Saquon Barkley bounce-back year continues. 18 rushes, 87 yards, 23 fantasy points. That ties his second highest total of the season. So for teams rostering or starting, obviously, Saquon Barkley in the first round of the playoffs, they get paid off the entire year. It's just been a great year for Saquon.
Yeah, I think Saquon's kind of been forgotten about the past month because he hasn't really done anything for a month, and he's been hurt. He's had really tough matchups, but, I mean, the Commanders are a tough matchup as well, and he looked the best he has in 4 or 5 weeks. I don't know what he was, like the last drive, just repeatedly the spin move, just over and over again. It was like LeBron James in the finals against the Warriors, just spin move to the hoop every single time, and the Commanders just couldn't stop him.
He was great down the stretch, especially when they knew they were going to run, and he still was able to get through. I think the most encouraging thing about Saquon was the receiving game work. 33 yards through the air. That's his most since week 5. And so that was something that I thought was really encouraging if you have Barkley on your team. I don't know that there's any other takeaway from the Giants side of the ball. Decent rushing from Daniel Jones. On the Washington side of the ball, just to talk fantasy here for a second, Brian Robinson continues to look great and is the comeback player of the year. But they play San Francisco at San Francisco on a short week after an emotional loss against the Giants. And so other than Terry McLaurin, who has a 30% target share with Taylor Heineke, it's hard to get excited or recommend any player next week on the road at San Francisco, as we'll get into the week. But I think if you're a Commanders fan, really, and I am, obviously, a very disappointing game. But the positives here is that Jahan Dotson's a stud, man.
Yeah,
Brian Robinson's a stud. You already know about Terry McLaurin. Dotson's just awesome. Solid play from Curtis Samuel and Antonio Gibson. Like, there's stuff to – I mean, that's the thing. We'll see if the Commanders make the playoffs or not, whatever. But the fact of the matter is like, they nailed that in the draft. Like, there are some real young building blocks to build around for the Commanders. So I'm just – as somebody who has Dotson in Dynasty, I'm excited.
Chase Young coming back as well. Chase Young's coming back. It's not all bad for the Commanders.
Yeah, look, the defense played fine. Like there were a couple of things where they gave up the 97-yard the drive and couldn't, but at the end of the day, they gave up 12 points. Yep. Well, you know what I mean? You can't. They gave up 13 points. They gave up a touchdown and 2 field goals. You can't blame the strip sack fumble touchdown on them.
Yes.
At the end of the day, they held the Giants to 13 points. That should be enough to get a W in the NFL. I can't put this loss on the defense.
No,
I can't.
No, Kayvon Thibodeau was a monster.
He was great.
Great game.
He was unbelievable. He deserves all the praise that he gets.
Moving on to undoubtedly the most hilarious ending to a game we have seen at least this season. The Patriots lose to the Raiders. We showed the play at the top. I actually want to show the win probability chart just to show how out of control this game got. So we'll show that in a second. There it is. I mean, this game, guys, was just all over the place, and the Patriots lose on an egregious mistake with the pitch back at the end that goes right to Chandler Jones.
It'll live forever. That play will live forever. It's the kind of quintessential Merriam-Webster's dictionary definition of just an idiotic play.
As you see it here, Stevenson makes a great run here, but it's a tie game, and so they're getting out, and so then he pitches it just before he goes down to Jacoby Myers. Jacoby Myers trying to hit Mac Jones, but doesn't get it to him. Chandler Jones is one who catches it. He just trucks Mac Jones. Poor Mac Jones gets posterized. It's I thought we were just taking a knee here.
He was set up to die on this play.
And then Chandler Jones, and this is one of those, I don't know what they'll call it, but this is immaculate reception. This is the catch. This is this is one of those, this is the tuck rule. This is one of those iconic plays that I agree with you, Jay, will live on forever. Just like the Stanford band, the Stanford cow. That
the band is out of the field.
Everyone knows, right? Everyone knows. I don't know what they'll call this. And there's the Music City Miracle. Yeah. It'll be the Minnesota Miracle with the. I don't know what they'll call this, but
the truck stick from hell.
I mean, it's something, but
I feel bad for Mac Jones because
terrible spot to be in.
It was DeAndre Jordan dunked on Brandon Knight, I think, and it basically left Brandon Knight. But it was basically that with Chandler Jones.
Nobody stands a chance in that spot.
Yeah.
Nobody. Right. But beyond all that, what gets buried in this game is Ramondre Stevenson has a monster game.
Monster game
for fantasy playoffs.
Yeah, and I think there's probably some people that missed out on it, although if you listen to Fantasy Football pregame, we were we believe Stevenson's likely to play, and I'm rolling with him. But the fact of the matter is he came into the game questionable. He hadn't practiced all week except a limited practice on Friday. He was considered a game-time decision, likely to play, when Damian Harris had been ruled out, but people weren't sure if he was, and it was a late game. So I could see there probably were some fantasy managers out there that are I don't want to risk it that he doesn't play. I don't have a good pivot. I'm going to go with somebody else in an earlier game. And so they missed out on 24.8 fantasy points. Just a monster game again. He scores the touchdown, 172. He also catches 2 balls as well. He had 68% of the Patriots running back carries. He's played 4 healthy games over his last 4 healthy games, and he hasn't left the game early. And he's averaging 18.3 fantasy points per game. What's exciting is I think they tried him out. They were doing a little bit of a committee, right? Just 15 snaps in the first half for Ramondre. Pierre Strong and Kevin Harris saw some work as well. But then in the second half, I think they were okay, let's just ride Ramondre. 23 of his 43 snaps came after halftime. Looked no worse for wear, and they're home to Cincinnati, they're home to Miami, and then at Buffalo. The Patriots like to run anyway as it gets colder, and especially, I don't know that there's anything that, they're going to continue to ride. Ramondre Stevenson is an RB1, regardless of matchup throughout the rest of the playoffs. Just an absolute fantasy monster.
Yeah. I don't think there's too much to say about Ramondre. I think that on the other side of the ball, Darren Waller was relevant. I don't think anyone really knew what to do with Darren Waller, but he has a decent enough day, gets in the end zone, which makes his day. And I think that just with the dearth of quality at the tight end position, he's someone that you're just going to have to start next week.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'll own this. I said on Fantasy Football Now, I want to see it first. Let's see it. Who knows what kind of playing time he's going to have. The report we got from Mike Florio on the show is that they wanted to ease him back in. And by the way, that's exactly what they did. Yeah. He played less than half the snaps. He's basically split time with Foster Moreau. He had a single-digit target share, just a 9% target share. Now, it pays off because one of the 3 receptions he had was a 25-yard touchdown. But at the end of the day, if I told you he's getting a 9% target share, he's only going to catch 3 balls in this game, you'd have been I'm probably not going to start him. again, one of them a little bit of a busted coverage, and he winds up with a 25-yard touchdown, which is Darren Waller. I agree with you, Jay, because it's such a low bar to clear in terms of fantasy relevance for a tight end. You're starting Darren Waller here, but I don't think the analysis, I'll completely own when I get wrong. When the analysis is wrong in a lot of places, but I don't think it was necessarily on Darren Waller. The idea that Waller would score against one of the better defenses in the NFL against defending tight ends, which is the Patriots. They're really good in terms of limiting tight ends, and he's getting a 9% target share. Fluky is what it is. I literally said, I'm starting Chig Okonkwo over Darren Waller. That's what I said on Fantasy Field pregame. By the way, Chig Okonkwo, right, it was. I mean, exactly. Even with Waller's touchdown, I think he was only 2.5 or 3 points better than Okonkwo. So, I mean, anyway, but it is good news going forward for the Raiders. They play the Steelers next week, which is a pretty good matchup for Waller.
I think just lastly on Waller, the good thing is if you have Waller on your roster, the fact that the Raiders won this game means their season stays relevant for at least another week. So there's no shutdown risk with Waller the next week or two, you would think.
Yeah, I mean, if there's one negative of this game, and I don't know if there's a real takeaway, is just a bad game for Davante Adams. Again, we've talked about the run-heavy nature of the Raiders recently. This is now back-to-back weeks with under 11 fantasy points for one of, if not the best wide receiver in the NFL. 27 or more fantasy points in 4 of the previous 5 to this 2-game stretch where he's been bad fantasy-wise. I think the Patriots made a key to try to we'll give up 3 5-yard chunk plays to Josh Jacobs as long as Davante Adams doesn't kill us deep. Again, going against Pittsburgh, that's a much better matchup. If you survive this week, you're still rolling out Davante Adams. It's just a bad day at the office. What are you going to do? And and that happens. There are definitely people that just have really bad days at the office.
It happens.
It does.
Some have bad weeks.
Some have bad weeks.
Some have bad seasons.
Yeah. Some have bad seasons.
Moving over to the Jaguars with the big upset over the Cowboys, and we're going to play back Barry's Sunday bold prediction.
Jaguars, my Swaguars, beat the Cowboys at home. Again, trap game. I think Dallas, they should have lost to Houston last week. They're playing on borrowed time. They're looking ahead to Philadelphia. My Swaguars, only 4-point underdogs to the Cowboys. I think Trevor Lawrence pulls off the upset here. Give me the Swaguars over the Cowboys, my bold prediction.
Swaguars.
And boy, did he. And as obviously this was a game that took a drastic turn thanks to Trevor Lawrence. A monster day. 4 touchdowns, over 300 yards. Trevor Lawrence continues his hot streak and his breakout as a potential top 10 quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, he looked awesome in this game. And some of they were down in this game and just again, looked like a franchise quarterback. When you watch this game, he looked like a franchise quarterback, made big throws, got hurt by a couple of drops and that kind of stuff. But since week 12, guys, Trevor Lawrence is the 3rd best quarterback in fantasy football, right? He's now had 24 or more fantasy points in 3 of the last 4. Over the last 4 games, he leads the NFL in touchdown passes. He's got 11 over the last month as well. And so he now has back-to-back games with 300 or more yards, 300 or more passing yards and 3 or more passing touchdowns. We are seeing Trevor Lawrence finally shake off all the Urban Meyer-ness that got sucked into him in year 1 in his rookie and becoming the franchise guy that we all expected him to be when he was the number 1 overall pick out of Clemson. Next week, the Jaguars are at your New York Jets, so that's going to be a tough matchup here.
Short week.
But I think, and on a short week, right, the Thursday night game, but I just think he's good enough and their weapons, and we'll talk about them in a second, and they're pass-friendly enough that I think, Trevor Lawrence locked in as a QB1, and if you have him in Dynasty, which I do, you're pretty happy about this. Think about, they get Calvin Ridley next year. This is a really good offense. Second year, Doug Peterson, and they'll add Calvin Ridley to everything they've got going on. Things are looking up in Jacksonville.
Yep. I think the great thing about Lawrence as well from a fantasy perspective is that the Jags' defense isn't good. It's not good. And so he's in these high-scoring games. He's having to throw, and he gets it's not a good matchup against the Jets, but at the same time, despite the Jags' defense being bad, Zach Wilson can't move the ball. And we'll get to that at some point, but the Jets cannot move the ball. It's not like the Jets are going to have 40 minutes time of possession. So you would expect Lawrence, even with the tough matchup, to continue. You have to start him at this point.
Yeah, you absolutely do. And by the way, this is how annoying, here's how annoyed I was about last night's game. I was upset after this weekend because also I had some tough fantasy luck in terms of I played against Zay Jones in a couple of weeks, and we'll talk a couple of leagues, and we'll talk about this. But I'm just so I nailed that bold prediction. That's a really good bold prediction. The sound you heard was my bold prediction from Fantasy Football Pregame, predicting the Jaguars to beat the Cowboys. Pretty good bold prediction. I can't even enjoy it. You know what I mean? I went 2-0 on my my BetMGM breakdown bets on Sunday Night Football. It's great. Can't enjoy it. I'm so miserable and upset about about football this weekend. It just
that's all right. Taylor Heineke will lead you to the playoffs. Beat San Francisco.
If there is one thing, yes, I played against Zay Jones, and I wish. Why do I have to be so smart, Connor Rogers? Because he was in the love list. He was in the love list. I wish. Why couldn't this one have been one of my wrong calls? But no, I had to be right. He's now got 4 receiving touchdowns in the last 2 games. Since week 10, he's averaging double-digit targets here. He's really good.
Huge factor in the red zone.
Huge factor in the red zone. You don't expect 3 touchdowns, obviously, that's crazy. But the fact of the matter is that it's a very narrow target tree in Jacksonville. It really is Christian Kirk and Zay Jones with some Evan Ingram sprinkled in. And so given the elevated play of Trevor Lawrence, to your point about the fact that they're getting into these shootouts because the defense has struggled, Zay Jones very viable going forward. I don't think 3 touchdowns is a fluke, but the production isn't. There's a reason why he was on the love list last week.
Yeah, they've got a ceiling now as an offense too where, all of these guys produced. They all had good games. Jones, Kirk, Ingram, Etienne, Lawrence, they all had good games. So, the Jags, I think you just have to treat them as an elite offense going forward.
Absolutely. And Zay Jones just continues to be an absolute target monster. On the Dallas side of things, even in the stunning loss, a solid day for the backfield. Both Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott with good days on the ground. Tony Pollard had about almost 15 fantasy points. Zeke had 15.1 fantasy points. Here's the splits right here, guys, from yesterday. This is a committee or a duo they're both being effective right now.
They really are. Pollard's the more effective guy, but Zeke's getting the touchdown. He's now scored in 7 straight games, and so he needs the touchdowns to really pay off, but he's getting them. They're a highly efficient offense that's going to be scoring a lot. They love Zeke in the red zone, obviously. Since week 11, he's a top 10 fantasy running back. He's now had 18 or more touches in 3 straight games. Cowboys, really big matchup this week against Philadelphia. So Zeke and Pollard obviously will be involved. Pollard's a top 10 guy. Pollard since week 11, he's the 3rd best running back in fantasy. The Tony, I feel like that's been an underrated story in fantasy this year, is just how amazing Tony Pollard has been, because it's been a timeshare with Ezekiel Elliott, but drafted as a guy that was, sort of an insurance back and maybe a flex play to Ezekiel Elliott. He's full on become an RB1 over the last month.
Pending free agent, too.
Yeah, it's the receiving work there as well, which he wasn't getting consistently at the start of the year, but he's had these huge receiving games. The Minnesota game was ridiculous, where he was basically a wide receiver for half of that game. And now, like you said, big matchup with the Eagles. Cowboys, 1.5-point favorites in that. Not a lot of respect for the
no respect.
That's
Eagles.
Insane.
Yeah, I like
Give me the Eagles. Eagles getting points?
Yeah. Eagles should be favored.
That's going to move.
I
feel like by midweek.
100%.
People like the Cowboys.
That's true. The Cowboys have a big market.
Yeah,
Eagles
are the Cowboys that good? Are we sure the Cowboys are that good? I thought they were a month ago, but now, after their recent results, squeak home against the Texans, and I know the Chiefs squeaked home as well, but I think the Chiefs played a lot better against the Texans than the Cowboys did, and then they give up 40 to the Jags.
Yeah. 100%. I agree with everything you just said like that.
Smart guy.
Yeah, he is a smart guy. 100%.
Speaking of those,
would you like to be a referee in the NFL?
I was going to say, do you want to ref the next game?
Yes, I do.
There's a job for you on deck.
I will give you this in the jersey. I'll give you this jersey in the break.
Speaking of those 1-11-1 Texans that continue to just be annoying, they just hang around in games. They hung around for the Chiefs all the way to overtime.
How are the Texans against the spread this year? I bet you they're pretty good.
They went through a good stretch. Certainly they've covered the past 2 weeks with ease.
Monster spreads.
Double digits.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Almost double digits this week. Yeah, I do think this one was, the Chiefs, they fumbled 3 times.
Yes, some flukiness.
They missed the field goal from Butker to win it. I think Justin Watson dropped was it he who dropped the 50-yarder?
Yeah.
So it was it could have very easily been a 20-point loss because Mahomes did whatever he wanted in this game. 35 of 41, 2 touchdowns, spreads it around. Jerick McKinnon.
That's the story of this game.
Absolutely.
Apparently the second coming of Tony Pollard. Jerick McKinnon just out of his mind again.
I tweeted this out, and I was half being serious, but Jerick McKinnon is becoming everything we hoped CEH would be. And they're obviously very different running backs. McKinnon's a little bit smaller, but the fact of the matter is that they're using him massively in the passing game. He's just, he's getting a ton of targets. Last week I sort of thought, well, the touchdowns were a little fluky. The flip to him, and then he just races down the sideline, everything like that. But the fact of the matter is that his snap rate has increased for 4 straight weeks. He actually outsnapped Isaiah Pacheco 48-27. He actually had all 4 goal line carries in Week 15. He now has back-to-back games with 32 or more fantasy points. You see it there on the screen. Not Dalvin Cook, not Derrick Henry, not Chris McCaffrey. Jerick McKinnon is your #1 running back in fantasy for the second straight week as we head into Monday Night Football. And I wonder if it's a couple of things. Number one is that, listen, you earn more time on the field, right? You produce and they keep going back to you. I also wonder this is somebody that was in their system last year that was a key for them in the playoffs. And maybe they just know, look, he's really good when he's out there, but he's struggled with injuries. And so, you know what? We don't think he can be a full-time back throughout a 17-week NFL season. And we feel pretty good about our chances of playing in the postseason. So we're going to use him sparingly throughout the season. And then as we start getting closer towards the playoffs, we're going to increase his usage and really lean on him. And that's what they've done the last 2 weeks. And I don't know why they would go away from him because it's working in a magnificent fashion.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed Mr. McKinnon's work.
Sure.
He's always just been rock solid. And I think there is an element, too, as you get closer to the playoffs. Are they really going to be rolling with Isaiah Pacheco, a rookie in pass protection in the receiving game? McKinnon's just so much more solid. I think even if he doesn't have Pacheco's explosive upside, why wouldn't this continue?
He's become he's obviously already the passing down back on a team that throws a lot. But the fact that they're using him at the goal line, the fact they're using him between the tackles, to me, that's the eye-opener.
Yeah, he's got two huge things going for him. He's a veteran, and you want veterans out there in key playoff games, and he's got speed. Yeah. He's got speed as a pass catcher, and this is a team that's been looking to get more speed on the field. And then you look at Pacheco, fumbles in the second quarter, snap rates down. He's the kind of the guy that in between the 20s to get the ground attack going. It feels like the value is starting to go the wrong way, maybe a little bit of a rookie wall.
He's kind of having the season, well, not really, but there's elements of what we thought Miles Sanders' year was going to be like that I think are kind of infecting Isaiah Pacheco at the moment, where it is between the 20s. He's not getting the goal line carries. He's not the pass catching back. So he kind of needs to break one.
Yes.
He needs to break one outside of the red zone to have a really big day.
Yeah, look, since week 10, he's running back 26 on a points per game basis. And that sounds about right, which is basically he's a touchdown-dependent flex. Now, I think more often than not, he gets in the end zone because they like him and they use him between the tackles, and it's a team that's going to often be scoring position. It's his 6th straight game with at least 15 touches. So you're telling me, hey, you can start a running back that's going to get 15 touches on the Chiefs? You like those odds, generally speaking. So again, he wasn't terrible. He just, against the Texans, he should have had a much bigger day. And honestly, I think McKinnon had the day we thought Isaiah Pacheco was going to have. One of my shot for shots on Fantasy Football pregame was Isaiah Pacheco will have a top 10 fantasy day, 100 yards and a touchdown for Isaiah Pacheco. What I meant to say was Jerick McKinnon. So if we could, whatever. I pulled
a lot of names.
Exactly. I pulled a John Hussey. I screwed up.
I think the issue with Pacheco is the Chiefs haven't been blowing teams out, and that was a huge part of his appeal, that he was going to get these garbage time touchdowns.
Right. They're 2 touchdown favorites.
Yes, but it just hasn't happened. They haven't really blown anyone out since, ironically, they blew out the Niners in San Francisco at 21, which is really weird that they can blow out the Niners but not the Texans, but he's still providing value.
Yeah. Our last game on the opener here, guys, Bucs-Bengals. Everything looking great for the Bucs in the first half. They completely melt and turtle in the second half. It looked like Joe Burrow was going to ruin some fantasy playoffs for people with his first half, and then he hits the touchdown to T. Higgins, and everything kind of took off from there.
Yeah, 1,000%. This was a weird game.
Very strange.
It was very weird.
Just fumbles for fun.
Yeah, it was literally the tale of two halves here, where it's just all Bucs and then all Bengals.
Yep.
So really quickly, but let's stay on the Buccaneer side of the ball. And here's the positives for us in the fantasy world. Signs of life. Brady, a really good fantasy day, at least for him, right? 3 touchdowns and over 300 yards. He does have the 4 turnovers, which is tough, which limits him. But still, more often than not, 300 yards and multiple touchdown passes, that's the Brady we expected to see. He's now had multiple touchdown passes in 4 of the last 5 games. Great game from Chris Godwin. We expected that. Mike Evans, a usable, still doesn't get in the end zone, but still finally a usable game for Mike Evans. Out of nowhere, Russell Gage comes up with 2 touchdowns. I think that's fluky. But I do think if you've been hanging tough with Mike Evans, you feel good about this. And I think Tom Brady, semi-viable, especially, by the way, they're next Sunday night at Arizona. I do think Brady is viable next week against the Cardinals.
Yeah, I actually, even though they lost by 11 and they blew a 17-point lead, I feel a lot better about the Bucs than I did kind of yesterday morning, just because of the way they moved the ball against a good and improving Cincinnati defense. Brady, yes, it wasn't necessarily the most efficient, but he was over 7 yards per attempt, which he hasn't been every week. So I like them -4 against the Cardinals, and that's a good way to spend your Christmas night, betting the Bucs -4 against the Arizona Cardinals.
Right, with us here on NBC. That's the Sunday Night Football game right here on NBC NBC and Peacock. I'm a company man. Tyler Boyd gets in the end zone. He's now had at least 5 targets in 8 of the last 9 games. So in games in which teams struggle against the slot, which Arizona somewhat does, like I do think Tyler Boyd's interesting. And T. Higgins, if he survived last week in T. Higgins' goose egg, he makes up for it. 5 for 33. He gets a touchdown. Plays 80% of the snaps, which I think is important given the health questions. He's now scored a touchdown in 3 straight games that he's played. I don't think he can count last week as a game that he played. But the Bengals did what the Bengals do after a rough start. They turned it on.
Yeah, Burrow spread the ball around. All 3 wide receivers get in the end zone. Plenty more action from the weekend. A lot of players having
and it's interesting. It's the only thing that's kind of like eyebrow raising about the Bengals was sort of the running back usage. We don't have to get into too much of that. We can as we get further on. But that was the only thing was like Mixon had the majority of work. P. Ryan looked like the more effective running back, and the numbers suggest that as well. So just as we break down next week's games, we'll have the rest of the week to sort of talk about it. But just Mixon's not out of the woods yet in terms of having all the touches from Samaje P. Ryan.
Maybe the wear and tear has caught up to him a little bit. They really ran him into the ground the first couple months of the season.
And give credit what credit's due. Samaje P. Ryan's good.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's playing well. Exactly.
Jerick McKinnon-ish.
Very, yes. Like a young Jerick McKinnon out there. Oh, God. What an annoying Sunday night last week.
We'll be back with Weekend Warriors.
Great to win, great to come back. I had no idea it was the largest in NFL history. Something like that doesn't happen to average people. So I'm proud of the way the group did that.
What's the story with the jacket, and what would you have worn had the comeback not?
My wife dresses me, so she put it out last night, and I looked at her like I don't know, and she nodded, "You got to do it." So here we are.
That was the voice of Kirk Cousins talking about the ridiculous jacket he was wearing post-game. Look, my wife said you got to do it, so here we are. Speaks for every husband in America. I feel you, Kirk. I feel you.
She put out the ref jersey for you today? She's like, listen, I got something for you.
Yeah, my wife was pissed too. She gets it. She's angry. She was angry.
I like Kirk Cousins says that doesn't happen to average people. I feel like I definitely wouldn't have made that comeback, and I'm pretty much an average person. I don't fit into the Justin Jefferson, Kirk Cousins mold. Yeah. Good for you, Kirk. Good win.
A massive game for Kirk Cousins, 35-54. I feel like all of this was in the second half, by the way. 460 yards, 4 touchdowns, over 30 fantasy points. And a lot of that was due to a massive game from not Justin Jefferson, but KJ Osborne. And Kirk Cousins had a lot to say about Osborne after the game.
KJ, I thought was phenomenal today. He's a guy that he could do that every week. But you've got Justin, you've got Adam, you've got TJ, you got Dalvin, you got Alex Madison. And so it's been hard to get him the football as much as he deserves it and has shown the ability to deserve it. So he's a guy that all season long I've kind of felt, we need to get him more targets, get him more opportunities because he's the real deal. It's just been hard to get him as involved as he was today, and he showed it today what he's capable of. I have total confidence in him to be an elite receiver in this league.
I've been saying this for a few weeks now, but I think Justin Jefferson's been holding back KJ Osborne this whole time. And they need to stop throwing the ball to Justin Jefferson.
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a bunch of crazy things. I mean, you never know what can happen in the NFL. As we sit there, for those of you, we have a screen up of the fantasy wide receiver leaders in Week 15 in the first round of the playoffs. So Zay Jones, KJ Osborne, 1 and 2, just like we drew it up. Russell Gage at 5, Noah Brown at 6. Jahan Dotson at 9. I mean, again, you got Jefferson and A.J. Brown in there, and Godwin and Tyreek, and Waddle, of course, at 10, but still, just unbelievable. I played against a guy that, I just had like the worst. Like, I played against a guy that started Osborne against me. I played against a guy that had Zay Jones and Jalen Waddle. Just stupid. What are you going to do? So, about the Vikings game, 2 things here. Specifically, again, sort of a perfect storm. Down big, but in a dome environment against a defense that was playing a little bit over its head. The fact of the matter is that, again, not trying to bash the refs again, but the fact of the matter is that had those defensive touchdowns been called correctly, they're not down, you know what I mean? So they ended up getting the ball, but not having a defensive score, and so, at least on the second one. So I think that those things also contributed to to the craziness here. And then specifically to KJ Osborne, like, this is his second game this year with over 50 receiving yards. It's a great story. It's a great NFL story. And the Vikings, like, it's unbelievable that they managed to make this incredible comeback. But the Colts are generally bad against the slot. I mean, you think about Christian Kirk having a huge game against them early in the season. They have been really good against perimeter wide receivers. So I'm not surprised in a game in which they were throwing, a ton, right? I mean, Kirk Cousins threw the ball 54 times in this game. And so in a game in which you're having over 50 passing attempts, I'm not surprised that KJ Osborne got the looks that he did. 16 targets in this one to tie Justin Jefferson. Thielen also got into the end zone. But Kirk's right. As long as all those guys are healthy, right? Like KJ Osborne, it's a great story, but I can't imagine that you're starting him in the fantasy playoffs. I wouldn't expect this next week against the Giants.
No, and there's a very weird line in that game. The Vikings are only 3.5-point favorites at home against the Giants, which to me is way too small. The Giants are not very good. Notwithstanding, they played all right last night, but I don't know. There's this thing of like, oh, lol, the Vikings are frauds. Like, the Vikings are fine. They're a good team. They're a solid team, and they're more than 3.5 points better at home than the Giants, I think. I think that'll close 4.5, 5.
Yeah, that's a weird one. I could see them being 3.5-point favorites if the game was in New York.
Yes. Yep.
But the game being in New York. Anyway, that was a weird one. By the way, for those of you listening at home, I'm now changed into a Saquon Barkley jersey. I am honoring my bet. The Commanders did lose to the Giants. I bet, Pete, that I would wear a Giants player jersey on the air.
Matthew.
So,
man of honor.
So there you go. Even though, again, I think there should be an asterisk by that victory. The fact of the matter is the Giants did win, and I'm honoring that. So I will wear Saquon the rest of the show.
Continuing with our weekend warriors, J.K. Dobbins looked healthy, guys, and that's the most important thing. J.K. Dobbins on only 13 carries, 125 yards. We know the Ravens, without Lamar Jackson, were going to have to find something in the running game from the backfield, and Dobbins explodes in this one on the ground.
He did, and he looked, to your point, healthier because he was explosive the week before, but then also was limping around a little bit, but he looked better in this game. I don't know how the Ravens didn't win this game, let alone cover the spread. It was very, very strange, and I think there was a thought, like there was a lot of things swirling around. Why didn't they just run the ball more? They're averaging 7 yards per carry. Well, the thing is like, if you are running the ball more and more, then the other teams will start to load up to stop the run. So I think that was an element, but certainly Dobbins is the guy you want in this backfield going forward, and they have a very favorable matchup against Atlanta coming up.
Yeah, they really do. Nearly 5 yards before first contact, so getting great blocking as well. They've got the run game really going, and it's not like Edwards was bad. Edwards was fine. Yeah. He also ran well. He wasn't running as well as Dobbins. But I agree with Jay. Dobbins is the guy you want moving forward. But it was nice to see in a game in which he should have smashed. He did. He would have liked a touchdown as well because he's not getting a ton of passing game work. He only had one reception in this game. So he needs volume and yardage, but he's getting that to be, a viable RB2.
Yep. Saturday night, Barry, I saw you tweet Raheem Mostert, and boy, I hope everybody listened. 136 rushing yards on 17 carries. It's kind of crazy that the Dolphins didn't just feed him, especially as the weather got even worse throughout the game.
Super weird play calling, I think, in some cases. Because, you're just like, well, just keep running.
They couldn't tackle him.
I get you wanted to mix it up and you don't want them load, but I'm also a believer of, I'm going to keep doing this till you stop it. Till you prove to me you can stop it. Again, the Dolphins' offensive line was just dominating the Bills, and he sort of had his way. The other thing about Mostert is he's got that speed, that explosiveness that, if he gets a crease, he can break one. And so I think that with Jeff Wilson out, Mostert made the most of his opportunity. He's now had back-to-back games with over 70% of the snaps, 156 yards from scrimmage in this one as well. Again, you'd like more passing game usage for Mostert, but, a viable high-end flex, low-end RB2 if Wilson's in there, and if Wilson's out, borderline RB1, high-end, low-end RB1, high-end RB2.
He reminded me of the Dameon Pierce game against the Eagles on the Thursday night, where he's just breaking the tackles. It was just insane. And I do think a good thing for Mostert is that Tua was terrible in that game. His stats didn't look that bad, but he should have had multiple picks, including a pick six. He was not good. This is 2 weeks in a row of Tua being very poor. No conditions in the defense were tough, but maybe they do lean a bit more into the run.
Yeah, it'd be interesting. They're home to the Packers next week, so we'll see how that plays out. We mentioned Baltimore is playing the Falcons next week. Tyler Algier, guys. Yeah. I mean, Cordero Patterson got in the end zone, but Tyler Algier, in the first look at a Desmond Ridder-led offense.
Wasn't pretty.
Tyler Algier had a season-high 18 touches, and his third game this year with over 100 total yards. Like, and by the way, looked like the better running back. It's pretty interesting. He's out there in a bunch of leagues.
Yeah, and if they're leaning into youth, which they clearly are, because Desmond Ridder's not going to help you win games at this point, then why not go with the rookie in Algier?
The Mariota to Ridder transition was like the meme of the guy wearing the shirt and he's holding up the same shirt.
Right.
Unbox it. That's literally what the Falcons offense felt like. No difference in the pass game.
Yeah, Mike Florio from Pro Football Talk was on Fantasy Football pregame saying, like, their expectation is, I think I'm quoting him directly here, but Florio said, talking to sources around Atlanta, the expectation is they're not making any adjustments for Ridder. They're going to run the exact same offense. They just hope slightly more efficiently with Ridder than Mariota, and that's exactly what they did. They continued to be run heavy. They will be run heavy next week against Baltimore, and so Algier suddenly, signs of life in that Atlanta backfield. I agree with you. We know Patterson's, I think, 32. He's not the future in Atlanta. They need to see what they have in Tyler Algier.
To the game that Jay's been dying to talk about, Broncos-Cardinals, his favorite game of the weekend. Tracy McSorley, Brett Rippon, but the story was Latavius Murray.
Yeah, Latavius Murray, the featured superstar of an NFL offense in 2022. It's beautiful to see. Great story. Latavius Murray, he's the guy that they're giving work to. They don't want to throw the ball, certainly not with Brett Rippon, maybe not even with Russell Wilson. And as you can see, he went off against the Cardinals, 24 carries, 130 yards, gets in the end zone, 20-plus fantasy points. What more can you want from Latavius Murray, Matthew?
Well, look, we expected him. He made the love list this week because we expected massive volume, and that's exactly what Latavius Murray got with the 25 touches and positive game script as well, obviously. It was a good matchup. Marlon Mack. By the way, every time you think you're done with Marlon Mack, he shows back up. He also cashes in a touchdown. By the way, he ran well as well, 5 for 37. He averaged over 7 yards a carry. He also cashes in a touchdown. They're using Marlon Mack basically in the Mike Boone role. He caught 4 passes. So in deeper leagues, potentially Marlon Mack, who will, they'll be at the Rams next week on a
weird game. Really weird game.
Oh my God. But
the ugly of the ugly.
Game's pick. Marco doesn't know what to do with it.
Really brutal. Actually, but in all the games that he's played with Denver this year, Latavius Murray is averaging 16 touches a game. Like he is a volume-based RB2 and will continue to produce. I think you can trust what you're seeing here. Like they can't do a lot in Denver, but they can run the ball, and Latavius Murray is getting the volume to make him viable.
It's hard to believe he started the year on the practice squad compared to the role Latavius Murray is in right now.
It's his team. It's his team.
Yeah, 1,000%. You spend $250 million on a quarterback, and then your offense features a running back you literally claimed off waivers.
Yeah, Latavius Murray.
Yeah. All right, we're taking a break. When we're back, speaking of that scenario, Sunday Scaries when we return.
You know who's not a Sunday Scary? Deontay Johnson, 48% target share.
Peacock has the most live sports of any streaming service. Watch live games and events from the Premier League, NASCAR, the PGA Tour, every Sunday night football game, and so much more. It's all streaming on Peacock. Sunday Scaries, toughest part of the show, fellas, and you got to start with Jonathan Taylor. Not just a brutal day for fantasy, but it might be the end of the season now for Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, reports are that it's a high ankle sprain, and given the state of the Colts season, no reason to bring him back. So it feels like they're going to shut him down. Expectation here is it would be, Deion Jackson and Zach Moss as well. We'll get more into this tomorrow during the waiver wire show, but just a disappointing season for the number 1 overall pick, consensus-wise in fantasy.
Yeah, I think you just got to write it off. Like he'll be a top 3, top 4 pick next season, I would have thought, going into the year. And it brings up questions about Zach Moss and Deion Jackson. Zach Moss had 24 carries against the Minnesota Vikings. It's unbelievable.
In this economy.
Yeah.
I will say, I just want to point this out. I think it's important, and you can, hindsight being 20/20, but I do remember getting a tremendous amount of pushback and, I can't believe, no way on Chris McCaffrey. I'm out on him. Yeah, I don't. Why would you ever rank him second? Why would anyone ever take him first? He's always injured. No way. I don't want to touch him. Give me the safety of Jonathan Taylor.
Okay, how it goes.
Just obviously, who would you rather have right now, right? Yeah. So it's just again, it's injuries are generally hard to predict.
Yeah, I mean, I think we said this after week 3 or 4, and I think it was probably the right call, even though it hasn't worked out. But Cooper Kupp probably should have gone number 1, right? And he just gets hurt and it all falls apart, but he might have been the pick you should have made.
But again, it just goes to show, right? Yeah. Again, right? At one point in the season, we could have done the redraft. We've said you're taking Cooper Kupp number 1 overall, and yet, again, he's been out of the league and hurt. So that's been tough.
A guy that said, "Do not draft me." He tried to warn everybody, and he was pretty good all year, but did not have his best weekend. Miles Sanders, 11 carries, 42 yards, has the fumble. Nothing working in the receiving game for Miles
Weird
Sanders.
game for the Philadelphia offense. Like Jalen Hurts, he has the 3 rushing touchdowns and is amazing on the ground, but he didn't do much through the air at all. And Miles Sanders, 11 carries, 42 yards, 1 reception for negative 13 yards, 1.9 fantasy points, and what looked like it was going to be a really good matchup against the Bears, Matthew.
Absolutely brutal. This should have been a smash spot for Miles Sanders, and it just wasn't, given the matchup, given how that the Eagles were 9-point favorites in this game. We expected them to be run heavy, and I will say, right, again, you mentioned Jalen Hurts has 3 rushing touchdowns in this game. I think if Sanders gets 1 of them, the narrative changes on him as well. So Miles Sanders tried to warn us about this, right? Don't draft me, because he knew his role as the offense. And we talked about this in the preseason as well. One of the reasons why you would fade Miles Sanders is because, hey, he's got competition for goal line touches in Jalen Hurts. And they like to use Boston Scott occasionally and Kenneth Gainwell as well. So that was baked into his ADP. It's obviously a very disappointing game, but if you drafted Miles Sanders, you're still very profitable based on where he was going, because that's why he was drafted, is because there was questions about his touchdown equity. He still, despite the fact that he didn't get in the end zone, he had under 2 fantasy points. He is still, as we enter week 16, he still has 21 carries inside the 10-yard line, 21 carries in goal-to-go situations. That's 5th most in the NFL. The challenge, of course, is that Hurts has the 3rd most carries inside the 10-yard line, which is one of the reasons why Jalen Hurts was my fantasy ride or die at the beginning of the season. He's running back 15 on the season, and I think that's right. Like he's not involved in the passing game. He's an RB2 that you hope gets into the end zone.
He still exceeded expectations, I think.
1,000%. This is while it's frustrating because it happened in week 15, if you drafted Miles Sanders, this is what you signed up for.
Yep.
And look, I'll own it. Like, he was on my love list. Like, I thought he was going to have a smash game. He didn't, unfortunately, but I'm not panicked about it. This is what you signed up for with Miles Sanders.
Yep. Connor, do you want to talk about the Jets offense?
If we have to.
Yeah, you want to talk about Bam Knight?
The last one, the bandwagon loses a wheel this weekend, fellas. Bandwagon, 13 carries, 23 yards. Here's my take. Not only did he get banged up in this game, the Lions literally said, Zach Wilson, throw against us. We are putting everybody in the box. That's not Bam Knight's fault. But that doesn't mean it's the Jacksonville Jaguars are going to do anything different on Thursday night for Bam Knight.
1,000%. I think they'll be less successful than the Lions. I mean, the Lions have been, we talked about this, coming into the games, the Lions were a top 8 run defense over the last month.
They've gotten a lot better.
They've gotten a lot better against the run. And so I was surprised and maybe it's just they didn't want to challenge Zach Wilson. They want to keep it simple. I was surprised they didn't use him more in the passing game.
Me too.
Bam Knight. We'll see about hopefully he's healthy for Thursday night against the Jaguars, but assuming he suits up, I still think he'll be fine. Better days are ahead for Bam Knight and all of us on the bandwagon Thursday night against the Jaguars, against my Swaguars. It's me versus you Thursday night.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's me versus you. Me and Connor versus you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. I'm worried about Zach Wilson just submarining that offense entirely. It was very, very ugly.
You and all of Jets Nation. So, I
thought he showed moments.
Sure. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just the roller coaster.
He could have had 4 picks. Picks.
Yeah, no. I'm not saying it was all pretty. I'm just saying it also wasn't all a disaster.
Had some big throws.
And previous starts have all been disasters.
Yes.
So I'm just saying there's at least some positives there.
Mr. Brightside over here.
All right. When we're back, we're looking at our Monday Night Football props, thanks to our friends at BetMGM. Here are our most bet Monday Night Football props, courtesy of our friends at BetMGM. And a reminder, you can use the bonus code BERRY to make your first wager at BetMGM risk-free up to $1,000. Fellas, looking at the board here, anything you like or anything you're kind of fading the public on?
Yep, my one is, of these ones, Christian Watson score anytime touchdown plus 110 is the surest bet in football these days. But my favorite bet isn't on this board. It's Kyren Williams to go over 17.5 rushing yards. Not a great deal of science on this one. I just think that they're going to give him more carry. The Rams, their season's done. They're not making the playoffs. Against a bad Packers rushing defense, he probably only needs 4-5 carries to go over 17.5.
Yeah, I'm not convinced they're all in on Cam Akers, who hasn't looked great. Why
would you be?
Exactly. I'll give you two here. Give me Aaron Rodgers over 1.5 passing touchdowns again. 2 weeks to prepare for this game, off the bye, at home, Lambeau, primetime game. Rodgers has multiple touchdown passes in 70% of the games this year. Rams have allowed 3 touchdowns in 2 of their past 4 games. So I like over 1.5 touchdown passes. And I also like Christian Watson over 47.5 receiving yards. He's had at least 48 in 4 straight games. Rams have allowed 70 yards to a wide receiver in 3 of their past 4.
I'm looking at a low bar here. Ben Skoranek over 2.5 receptions. He had 8 targets with Baker Mayfield last week. So if Skoranek can't get to 3 catches, guys,
I like it.
I'm retiring from the prop game.
There you go.
You heard it right here.
I like that. You never feel excitement like a Ben Skoranek over.
Yeah, that's where this game is.
On a Monday night.
Yes.
Monday night
Close
football.
to Christmas.
Baker
there
Mayfield.
You go. Well, hopefully there's no refereeing drama. It's closing time, which means you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. For Jay Croucher and Connor Rogers, I'm Matthew Berry. Good luck tonight. I hope your Monday Night Miracle comes through. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace out. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBC Sports and RotoWorld.com. Just want to thank you so much for watching what you just watched, or at least being too lazy to click out of it after the autoplay just kept it going. So either way, thank you so much for just letting it scroll by your screen. And now I'd like to ask you respectfully, please subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel for the latest NFL news, fantasy headlines from RotoWorld, and betting analysis from NBC Sports Edge.